Hello, everyone. I am Founding Father Benjamin Franklin, and welcome to the Step Up America Foundation podcast. Join us every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we celebrate incredible Americans from all walks of life. You may hear from a NASA astronaut, a professional or amateur athlete, a musician, and of course, current and past military heroes, just to name a few. And who knows, you might even learn a thing or two along the way. Well, that's enough for me. Let me introduce you to our hosts, John McIntosh, Mark Renahan, and Adrian Garcia. Take it away, team!
And welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Step Up America Foundation podcast / radio show / whatever you want to call it, Mark. I am John McIntosh, and I am blessed to have with me the voice of Ben Franklin, the one and only Mr. Mark Renahan, sitting to my right-hand side. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Great show today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, this is one of our better ones.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we also have the one and only Mr. Noah Garcia, one of the facilitators in the classroom.
Noah Garcia?
Adrian.
I'm
What?
sorry, Adrian.
What?
Yeah, no, I apologize. It's been a long day. I
Thanks.
apologize
No, you're
profusely.
fine.
Adrian Garcia,
one.
one of our facilitators in the classroom and our engagement coordinator. And, of course, I got the two mixed up. We have Noah behind the scenes. How are you, sir?
Everything is working now.
Excellent. That is fabulous. Well, today, as always, is Tuesday, which is Lacey's Corner. So I want to introduce the one, the only WWE superstar herself, Miss Lacey Evans. How are you, ma'am?
I am alive and well. It's been a long day for me also. So excuse my background. I'm in Florida, the Sunshine State. I had some work here, Monday Night Raw last night, and I haven't hit the road yet. So
No,
I got
awesome.
a little extra training to do.
No, I got you, but excellent performance last night, Miss Evans. Heck yeah. That's
I
all
got
I'm gonna
tired
say.
just
That was
watching you,
good.
Lacey, but great
So,
job.
yeah. No.
Very good job.
Awesome.
But we have another guest today. I'm going to introduce. We have had him on before. He's actually a repeat guest because we're running out of guests and we're trying.
No,
with everyone we got.
no, we're not running out of guests. I'm sorry to interrupt
Go
you,
right
Mark,
ahead.
but the guest that you're about to introduce has
Is,
one of the
yeah.
most phenomenal stories and had me glued to the headset. And we are grateful to have him back.
We are. He is one the original founding member of the rap group House of Pain, of course, the famous song Jump Around. But now he is the executive director of the Outsiders House Museum, of course, based upon the famous novel by S.E. Hinton, The Outsiders. It is an incredible museum. He has moved to Tulsa to support it. And in terms of good citizens, Danny is one of the best. He gives back unbelievably to his community. So, of course, let's welcome the one and only Danny Boy O'Connor. Danny, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I appreciate it.
All right, Danny.
Fantastic intro.
I try. When we wanted to have you on, I love your story, and I know that Lacey would love your story. So we always like to just jump right in. And as we have two celebrities on the show at once, I wanted to know if you could, first introduce you to Lacey Evans, but maybe just tell her your story about how you went, from House of Pain to you had some issues, and then you got back into what you're doing now. And I'll just let her kind of chime in with you.
Okay. So I guess I'll start from the start because nothing really starts with House of Pain. It really starts with growing up. And growing up, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, in the late 60s. I grew up in the 70s. My father went to prison when I was around 2 months old. We were evicted, and so we moved in with my grandparents, my mother's parents. And I spent the first 6 years either with them or down the street. We lived in a projects called the Tyson Lane Projects. And in the 70s in New York, man, it was tough times. I don't know if you've seen it. It's ironic. I think it's the 42nd anniversary of the movie The Warriors today. But New York in the 70s was pretty cutty. There was a garbage strike, and there was everybody was coming back from Vietnam War, and heroin epidemic was pretty, full blown in New York City. And there was a lot of broken homes in the project. There was a lot of alcohol abuse. There was a lot of drug abuse. There was a lot of violence. And so I grew up thinking that was kind of part and parcel of just growing up. I didn't know that anybody had a different kind of life than that. The only time I really felt any stability or any kind of calm was at my grandparents' house. But we ended up moving to California when I was 6 years old. And fortunate for me, my mother used to send me back to New York or New Jersey every summer to be with my aunts and uncles. And that was always a nice reprieve from what was going on. And again, my mother did the best she could. I think she had a broken picker when it comes to men. And I was told from an early age I would be just like my father, dead or in prison by the time I'm 21. And I always thought, you know, that was an odd thing to say, but I kind of wore it as a badge of honor. My father was a pretty well-known tough guy in his time. And, you know, it was kind of a double-edged sword. I looked at it as a rite of passage to be a tough guy, and being Irish, you know, we drink, we fight, we do all of those kind of things. But on the same token, there's a price that comes with that. But, you know, it didn't, I don't want to tell you I started drinking and doing stuff bad early, because it's not the truth. It wasn't until about high school that I really started to drink on the regular. And, you know, first it was fun, then it was fun with problems, and then it became all problems. And I remember the first time I got drunk, because, you know, I don't remember the first time I ever had a beer, or, you know, we sold, you know, liquor from my mother's liquor cabinet. But I do remember that first time it went down and I got that magical thing that happens. And why I remember it looking back is because fundamentally, when I had that drink that night at this nightclub called Phases in the San Fernando Valley in California, and it was that right mix of vodka and orange juice in the parking lot, and then went inside that club, something happened that night, and I'll never forget it. And what happened was it changed the way I felt about the world, and that I felt about the world was looking at me. And it also fundamentally changed the way I was looking at you. And for the first time in my life, my clothes fit a little looser. I felt like I had the ability to talk to women, to dance. I didn't feel so, and just, I didn't feel so tight. And it was that magic elixir. And so I pursued that. My first thought was like, why did I wait so long to drink at 16? And my second thought immediately after that was like, I will never not do this. I will do this every day for the rest of my life. I loved it that much because it just opened this other me that wasn't afraid of the world, that wasn't living in fear, that wasn't less than, that didn't feel self-conscious and all of that stuff. And I think early on, because of my situation at home, and maybe it's something that's just in us, you know, as O'Connors, but I believe the big lie. And the big lie is that as I am by myself, I'm not enough. And I've been my whole life trying to figure out how to be a little bit better, a little bit smart. I wish I was a little bit this, and always trying to, it's just, I'm not enough. And so I tried to cover that up with the drinking. And so while normal people were going to school and getting an education and doing what they should be doing, it was around 16 or 17. I dropped out of school in 9th grade. I made it to high school, but I hung out. I joined a gang at that point. I was selling drugs. You know, I hate to admit that, but it's not that I hate to admit that, but I look it back, it was, you know, it was unfortunately kind of what some of the cool guys did, especially if you were a street dude and you were into hip hop early, which, you know, I'll back up and tell you how all that happened as well. But what I'm trying to tell you is that I wasn't getting an education. Nobody was on me to get an education. My mother, as long as I stayed out of her way, she was happy. I didn't feel wanted at home, so I went and replicated that family that I had always wanted on the streets. And I think there's millions of kids that understand that concept. I've been a member of Outlaw Bike Club. I've been a member of various street gangs. And it was also the appeal of hip hop, because hip hop, we don't do anything alone per se. If you're a breakdancer, you're in a crew. If you graffiti, you write with a graffiti crew. And so, and being in a group I just always liked being in a group, because I didn't feel enough, but I felt together, maybe we had a fighting chance. And so while those are all romanticized ideas and we all love that kind of rebel and outlaw, there's a serious price that most of us pay if you involve yourself in that. And fortunately for me, while everybody was going to school and getting an education and going on to bigger, brighter things, I wasn't doing anything. But the fortunate part comes in where we ended up making a record. I went to school with a kid named Eric Strode, who's Everlast. He had a solo record deal with Ice-T at the time, which was, I mean, spectacular. I mean, what kid at 17 has a solo record with Ice-T and Rhyme Syndicate? I mean, it was like, you know. And that record didn't, for whatever reason, it just didn't find its home. And he was looking for something, a new way to spin it. And at the time I was like, I had a group of dudes. We ran around as like a gang, and we kind of surrounded Eric, and I honed out this group called House of Pain. And I offer that up to tell you that it was kind of like, it saved my life, but it also postponed the inevitable. And like I said, there's a reaction and a consequence to any of those bad actions, whether it's drinking, selling drugs, fighting all the time, not getting an education, and just being that bad guy. I didn't pay the price immediately. So at 20 years old, we made a record, Jump Around came out, made us, we were rap stars all of a sudden. We had $1 million in our bank account. And I thought, I was the smartest guy in the room, and nobody could tell me nothing. Meanwhile, back then I never did drugs. I want to offer that up. In hip hop back in the days, if you did drugs, it was like a major, it was like a faux pas deluxe. There was just, you either sold drugs or you didn't do it, but you never did drugs. So I didn't do drugs back then. Drugs comes into my story later. But it was a nice, 8-year run with House of Pain. Made a lot of money, did a lot of stupid stuff, had a lot of fun. But when it was all said and done, I was 28 years old, with the mindset, the skill set, and of a 17-year-old boy, and I didn't know how to cope with that failure. To make things worse, Everlast went on to get a Grammy and sell 1 million records with the solo record. My DJ went to Limp Bizkit, and they sold oodles and oodles of records and got rich. And there I was, the world's biggest pity party for myself, and that's when I really dove into drugs head first. Originally, it was ecstasy. I graduated quickly to cocaine because I couldn't do ecstasy habitually like I like to do it, because I wanted to not feel 24 hours a day. And I eventually ended up with what Willie Nelson describes as roadie coke, which is methamphetamines. And in the 90s, LA was saturated with methamphetamines. And I remember not having the drug of choice at a party, and a girl said, "You don't look so good." And I said, "I don't feel so good." She said, "Do you need anything?" I said, "What does that mean?" She says, "You need something to pick you up?" I said, "Absolutely." So we went in the bathroom. What I thought I was getting was cocaine. What I ended up getting was methamphetamines. And I remember being disgusted at that because it was so beneath me. Meth? Are you kidding me? But I took it anyway. And like I described that drink that happened at that nightclub where it changed everything in my life, for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, oh my God, why did I wait so long to try methamphetamines? And number two was, I never not want to do this again. I'm going to feel like this. I want to feel like this every day and every night. And what it did for me is what I couldn't do for myself. I heard a transvestite share at a meeting one time. They said, the first time I did methamphetamines, I felt wittier, prettier, and tittier. And I said, hey, man, I feel just like that too, and that's what it really did for me too. And for the first time in my life, I thought I'm going to make up for lost time. I'm depressed. I'm bankrupt, morally, spiritually, and monetarily. I was broke. And I needed something to make up for all of those years of doing, messing around. But cocaine didn't do it for me. Meth didn't do it for me. Ecstasy didn't do it for me. And I found out the hard way. And eventually I became addicted to those full time, but in particular meth. And I was out there, doing stuff that similar to what I was described when I was in my high school years. Just in a bike club and manufacturing and selling, and it was just all bad. And the only thing that would have waited for me was jails, institutions, or death. And fortunately enough, I ran into a guy that I knew that had a little sobriety. I knew that he had around a decade of sobriety, which to me was like, he was from a different planet. I couldn't get 10 hours of sobriety back then. I didn't know that 10 days was going to ever be possible. 10 months would have been much less somebody with 10 years. But for whatever reason, when I ran into him, he said he had relapsed and he was only back 6 months. And while that's not what, it's not ideal for him, for me, it put a human touch to him. And I realized even with 10 years, that you still have to do the work. And I said, are you still going to meetings? And he said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, why don't you come with me? And for the first time, I was willing to try something different. Went to meetings. I don't know what they said or what they were talking about, but I did hear laughter for the first time, and it had been a long time since I'd heard anybody sincerely laughing, and it felt good.
Danny, how old were you at this point?
At that point, I was 30 years old. It was 2000, and the 90s were, I spent 8 years in the band, and then the next 4 years on methamphetamine. So it was around 2000. I want to tell you that from then on, my life has been perfect. I got 3 years of sobriety. First year, I did all the work and everything that was asked of me and required. The second year, I got a little money and started to feel like I was the guy again. And by year 3, I thought this was fantastic. Thank you guys for helping me out here. I'm going to start drinking again. And I appreciate you guys as what you did for me. And from that point on, I thought if I just didn't do drugs again and I only drank, my life would be okay. And it took me 72 hours to find myself right back on methamphetamines. And it was about a 3.5-year downward spiral where I ended up living in a warehouse, no teeth in my mouth, very little teeth in my mouth. I got brand new. $70,000 worth.
Those look sharp. Those look sharp.
But, and listen, I had a warrant for my arrest. They'd impounded my car. People were, I was looking for people. People were looking for me. It was all bad. And, at the end of the day, I was finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I felt I had a window of opportunity to try it once again to get sober. And so, well, that's my story in a nutshell. There's a million little things that happen in between that. The Outsiders thing is a weird thing for me because if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, in a nutshell, it's basically the story of the haves and the have-nots. It was written by a 15-year-old author here who was in 11th grade, failing English and got a D+ in creative writing when she wrote The Outsiders. I get people going, I love S.E. Hinton and all his work. And I'm like, it's Susan Eloise, and she's a woman. She wrote that book. It was published in 1967. It's never been out of print in 54 years. It is the book that starts the young adult literature category, which is the largest category that, in sales-wise in books. And I never read that book in 7th grade, but I did see that movie in 8th grade when it came out in 1983. And again, it was the first time that I saw something that resembled my life, basically not feeling like I was loved and wanted at home, needing to find a way to fix that. And so I did that through, the streets, and seeing Matt Dillon and Ralph Macchio and C. Thomas Howell and Tom Cruise all in denim jackets and running amok in the neighborhood, but they all had that common interest, was to look out and protect each other. That always looked appealing to me. And so that movie was always my favorite movie, and that movie always stood out to me, never thinking in a million years that I would end up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, buying the Outsiders House Museum. And then one thing started to happen after another. And I'll stop there just because I don't want to keep, I could go, No,
I know. Well,
if you have any questions or you have any answers, but I didn't find the house so I hadn't been on the road in a decade. For that decade, I was either using drugs. Me and Everlast were not in contact anymore. We did not get along. So there was no chance for House of Pain. But what I did do when I got sober this time, which in April 15th will be 16 years.
Very good.
16 years ago, I put a group together, and this is how I meet Mark Renahan. Prior to getting sober, a kid from Boston reached out to me through a mutual friend and said, I'm a fan, and I would love to pay you to come and do a verse on my record. And I said, guy, you got the wrong guy. I'm a little wiped out at this point. I'm half in the bag, and you want to fly me where? To do what? I'm like, okay. And so I got to Boston, and I was so high, I slept through the whole thing. He didn't even get the verse. But this is how I meet Slane, who's also in my group, La Coca Nostra. But at the time, we were both, in a bad way. Happy to report he's also long-term sobriety now too, of I think 6 or 7 years. But this is how I eventually meet Mark Renahan. But we put another group together, and the group ended up making a few records. We're still a group, and that group brought me on tour for the first time in a decade, and it brought me to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And at that time, Tulsa rang a bell, and I didn't know why. I was like, Tulsa, why does that sound so? I said, son of a gun, I think The Outsiders was filmed here. And that was in 2009. In 2009, I took my road manager, and we got a car to drive us around, and we went looking for movie locations. And wouldn't you know, by a series of different events, we ended up finding the house from the movie. And at the time, it was for sale for $42,000. And listen, $42,000 is a lot of money. But now when you're living in Beverly Hills, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a house? And it's the house from The Outsiders? And it's 42 grand. Like, I'm already in my pocket. Like, let's go halves, or we got to have this thing.
Steal.
But I right. And I was like, man, I can't believe it's still on Earth. And 2, I can't believe it's for sale, and nobody's buying this at 42. And so what I did, I posted on Facebook back then, that and the venue we played was the Cain's Ballroom. It's the second to last place the Sex Pistols ever played on their only U.S. tour. And Sid Vicious punched a hole in the green room dressing room wall, and they've cut it out and framed it in the office. And I'm good friends with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. So I posted the photo of the Sex Pistols hole, and I posted a photo of me in front of the Outsiders house, and people lost their minds. They were like, "Where are you? That's incredible. Where is that house on the Warner Brothers lot?" And so what ended up happening, I started using that tour bus. I was the only guy sober, highly caffeinated, and bought a new camera. So I started going on the tours, looking at it with different eyes. And what I was looking for was anything that was culturally significant, in particular in pop culture. So, for instance, after here, we went to Minneapolis. I went to Mary Tyler Moore's house, where they filmed the establishing shots for that, and then we're in the mall where she throws her hat. When I get to New York, I go looking for Son of Sam true crime locations based on the historical photos, and we start this thing, and it becomes a movement, really, of people who do the same thing that I do, and never thinking I was going to end up coming back 5 years later to buy the house, but that's exactly what happens. And for 5 years, I kept thinking, what a trip to find that house, and it starts this whole beautiful hobby of mine that's still going now. And then I start to think, like, I wonder if that house is going to make it, because the house, every time I would pass through, would look worse and worse. And at year 5, it looked like it was going to be torn down. And so I contacted the owner. We made a deal, and I ended up buying that house for $15,000, which at the time, I mean, it was like my head exploded. I couldn't believe I got it for 15 grand. I understood once I got to the home and went inside why it was so cheap. It was a complete teardown.
Right.
They were using it as a trap house, and
Oh God.
it was I mean, if you ever seen the movie Seven and that hoarding scene in that movie, you'll understand. That being said, it was the greatest thing ever, because it enabled me to make a call to action, and we GoFunded the whole thing. And I like to tell you, we raised our goal, which was $75,000. We probably got 150 into it. And everybody from the author to the musician Jack White donated 30 grand to it. Billy Idol donated to it. And our biggest contributors is really the locals who cut the grass, fixed the roof, helped me with the chimneys, resurfaced the floors. And it's a beautiful museum. What I thought I was making was a movie museum, because it's the house from the movie. What it turned out to be is a family museum, because I get people from 8 to 80. It's the whole family tree. And what they do is, it's a rite of passage. It's required reading, The Outsiders, for most 7th graders. And it's the book you give kids like myself who do not like reading in particular. And it opens a whole new world to them. And the smiles on their face are I'm overpaid. If I never make any money over there, which I'm already overpaid, because the smiles and the girls crying in there, it's a pretty incredible experience. And never in a million years, but this happens because I was sober, and it happens because I put one foot in front of the other. And people ask me all the time, like, why didn't somebody locally save this place? And how come it took an outsider? I said, you just said it right there. It took an outsider. I was clueless. I'm that fool who had no money and no plan. And sometimes you have to do that kind of stuff. Like, I get it. A well-laid plan and a nice amount of money would get a lot of things done efficiently. But in this case, anybody who knew what time it was looked at that house and goes, I am not spending a penny on that house. It's a money trap. But I was foolish enough not to know that, and I dove in head first. And sometimes you need to do that. So as much as I'm for stability and sobriety and all that good stuff, you got to take some calculated risks, especially if you're passionate. Man.
It's a leap of faith. I mean, it's incredible that you go through all of that in your life, and somehow you end up doing this incredible. I mean, what a selfless thing that you're doing. And you said it yourself. It's not about the money. It's about those kids, that it's a required book, and they get to actually feel like they see a piece of history. You're keeping this alive well after. And to be honest with you, that was the first book I've ever read from cover to, I promise you. And because I'm like you, it takes a lot for me to be invested in a book, especially when we already come from the hard knocks and sitting there and you need a certain amount of imagination in order to really get behind a book. But people like you and I who've been through hell from the beginning, it's hard for us to pretend of unicorns and rainbows and all this, right? Like, I don't know if you can relate, but and then all of a sudden the teacher puts, the Outsiders in front of you. And here we are again, we've got 2 full-time jobs. Our parents are addicts. We're busting our butts to even just come to school. Nobody's waking us up. We're catching now you want me to read another damn book. But when I started to read The Outsiders, I'm like, holy crap, I'm going to keep flipping these pages because I can relate to this. You know what I mean? Like even the movie, you know, they don't have mommy and daddy in there with breakfast in the morning and like, hell no, them kids are on their own and their surroundings, they're creating this camaraderie and this love and this family that has nothing to do with DNA, nothing to do with bloodline, but that's what makes them feel alive. And I can relate to that a lot. The only difference I think between you and I and our paths was when my parents were addicted and gone and struggling with mental health issues and high on the couch, flopped over, you know, I didn't choose the skipping the school and the drinking. I chose in gangs to surround myself to feel like it's family. What I chose was sports. You know what I mean? Like I could relate when you said, you know, that you were out there drinking and hanging out with the boys in the gangs because that's what made you feel like you had a family. I did the same thing, but I invested all my time in sports because that team was my gang. And that's what kept me going. So all the kids out there listening or that will read and listen to this back, you know, these are two stories that show that you have a choice. When you're a child and you don't have that loving family and that sense of love and worth within your home, you could either go like Danny did and feel it that way, which you see it took him this long to finally be like, damn, if I could just go back, you know what I mean, and change those little things in life that I made, I could have done this sooner. I could have been having the impact that I have now on these kids and on the world sooner because you could tell his passion. You know what I mean? Or you could choose to invest all your time, your angry and sad time, because Danny, is that not one of the hardest things? Here we are. My father is flopped over high on the couch at this moment. Your daddy has been locked up since you were a child. What are we supposed to do as children? You know what I mean? Like we feel like we have nothing. And you said it yourself. Your grandma's told you you're going to end up like your father. And how sick in your mind do you feel like that's a rite of passage? Like that's a positive thing? What other choice did you have, right? So, you know, that's called breaking the cycle, where either our youth can continue to look at that as a rite of passage or as a positive thing, or they could choose to break the cycle to the point where Danny's kids and his kids, that they'll never say, you're going to end up like your daddy in a negative manner. They're going to say you're going to end up like your daddy and take your life and do something positive with it to the point of impacting these hundreds of children that are coming in to this outsider's house with tears in their eyes because they can actually see, they feel like me and Danny felt when we read the book, like, damn, this is us. This is who we are. And we can make that difference in life. So I just want to point out and say thank you for not only pushing through no matter what the hell you've been through, but now giving back to the babies in America right now that get to come to this house and get to hear this story and see the difference you've made and this crap. I got to watch my
You're good. Kid show, Lacey.
It's all good,
the
Lacey.
hard stuff that you've been through, because not everybody is going to choose, you know, the sports team as their gang. Right. You know, they're going to have to go through the hard knocks and choose the negative gang, you know, mentality. But at the end of the day, you chose to change that and not become your father like your grandma said that you would be. You did it a positive. So now your children, if you have any, or you broke that cycle, man, you know, and I'm proud of you for it because I know it's hard. It is hard to wake up every day and look yourself in the mirror, knowing the life that we've been through and continue to say, no, I'm going to break the cycle and I'm going to leave a legacy of sobriety and positivity and something behind for our youth.
I don't have.
Powerful.
I hate this. I always have to be the bad guy because both of your stories. And
we got to go to commercial.
Yeah, we got to go to a commercial.
Give us
break.
2 seconds.
Sure,
We got a
quick.
commercial for 45 seconds. We'll be right back, everyone, after this quick commercial.
Right back.
We believe at New Day USA, we have a noble purpose. We want to be known as America's mortgage company for veterans and active duty service people. Some of them are giving their lives right now today for the freedoms that we have here in this country. So for us, at New Day to help those people at this point in time. It's a labor of love. It's a noble service, and that's what we're all about.
Do you know Chris Jericho?
Well,
I do.
You guys are back live. Way to go, Danny. Way to mess up my intro to the second half of the show, Mr. Danny Boy.
He's a special guest. He can do that, Don.
I'm just going to turn it over because Mark and I, it was hilarious going into the show. We were like, we're not going to have to say 2 words today.
I have a question for Danny, real quick. And another thing that you pointed out that, the youth that are listening, when you said, because you said it twice, but you didn't change it to where the mindset's different. When you said you got drunk for the first time, that feeling was something that you continued to chase. And then when you did the harder drugs, that feeling was something that you continued to chase. Would you not say that right now, when those babies come into the Outsiders Museum and you see the tears, could you not compare that feeling of man, I want to feel this again and again and again? Because I want the world to know out there, yeah, drugs feel good because it's in a way, and this is, I don't do drugs. I never have. I've been drunk maybe a handful of times because seeing my father under the influence, and I lost my father to overdose, but my whole life growing up in the drug addiction, I saw what drugs can do. I saw what alcohol can do. So instead of the gangs, I did the team. Instead of the run in the streets, I worked my butt off. And when I got championships, that was where I knew I was doing it right. I kept going. But that same feeling where you feel like you're happy, you're content, and you keep chasing that. Can you not compare that to those babies that come in, how you said when the tears start flowing and you see, that just makes you feel good. This is what you need to be doing.
Yes and no. So what I felt with the change happened for me, it's a phenomenon known mostly to, alcoholics. It's a change in perception. And what I was looking for, I was looking through, and what I'm looking through is skewed. So the way I look at the world is we all have obviously different, we all see everything through our lens, which is our, perspective, but mine was always skewed. And so when I drink or I use, it turns it into something, and it makes the thing look the way I want it to look. What you're describing also, that when you feel something and you get that visceral response and I stopped getting those because what I was looking through was skewed and I just couldn't find it anymore. And I found it by, retwisting that. And it's a spiritual matter for me. I was always spiritually bankrupt. I believed again early on that I wasn't, I got to watch my mouth, but I wasn't much. I'm not much, but I'm all I ever think about is something you hear a lot in the rooms. And so I was like that. I'm an egomaniac with low self-esteem. Okay. And drinking kind of finds the center for me until it doesn't. And so it's a crutch, and it's something I used for years. And then once I realized I was Irish, I was always Irish, but it didn't have any significance to me. But as I got a little older and I started hanging around a few kids, I noticed the kids that were fighting and drinking like I was, they all had O's in the last name, or Mick this, and I was, so we kind of, that was our version of the Outsiders, a bunch of Irish kids running around, and it was a bunch of other kids too. You won't believe, you'll believe it, but it's almost hard for me to believe. Today, I live in a hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I went downstairs to the lobby for a second, I was on my way to the dentist. Like I said, it's years of.
They look fabulous, though, Danny.
Amazing teeth.
Yeah, thank you. Money well spent. You know what? I tell you what, if you ignore your teeth long enough, they will go away. So that is, I ran into a guy I haven't seen in 20 years, and me and this guy used to run amok. And I don't know, God has a crazy sense of humor. And he was in the lobby today. He got a flight from the Super Bowl, and he was going back to Las Vegas, and they had a stopover. And I don't know how this happens, and why I bring this up is it's crazy. So what I do now to continue to stay sober is to be of service. And that is so counterintuitive to everything I heard growing up, all the stuff that I was after as a kid, all the messages I got from movies, music, and my choice of movies and music. You know, I saw Scarface as a kid and thought it was a documentary, and I thought that looked good. I could do that, you know. And I listened to rap music because it was talking about take money. If you ain't making money, go take money. And I'm 6'6" alpha male. I could take money. And so those are messages that I kept playing over and over. And I thought, oh, if the rap business goes bad, like Biggie said, we could just go back to the street business. And that's a terrible thing to believe, because then you kind of fulfill that. It's like self-fulfilling. And I had to break that before I could even attempt to, the sobriety I had to get in check first. And through the work that I've done, I found out that, you know what, the way we keep it is to give it away. And so my full-time job, my primary purpose is to trust God, clean house, and help others. And it's not always easy. And sometimes I understand, like, how do I get mine? Like, where, like, and I don't need to know all that. I have an overactive imagination, which works well with collecting and making creative stuff, but it's also the death of me when I start to, freak out. And so the way we do sobriety is one day at a time. And all I have to worry about is today. Will I lay my head on my pillow at the end of the night as a sober man? Chances are really good, because I do the work, and I can only stay clean on today's shower, not yesterday's shower. And today what I do is, again, trust God, clean house, and work with others, or be of service. To me, even though this is, good for me doing a podcast, this is my service for today. Like I'm carrying the message. I'm sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And it's a great day at work today for me. You know what I mean? If I don't do anything else today, my work is done. I've met a new friend, Lacey. I got to chop it up with Mark and the gang.
Definitely. I gotta have you on my show too, man. and I have one question before we cut off.
Yeah.
So for me, all the kids out there, the young adults out there listening to this, we have different paths, but I feel like we have a lot to relate in as far as growing up. Me losing my father to addiction, me growing up smothered in addiction and depression and mental health. If I could tell those kids or young adults one thing from my what's the word that I'm looking for? I always do this. I'm so tired.
Perspective.
What did you say, John?
Perspective.
My perspective and what I've been through. If I could tell these kids and young adults one thing, whenever it comes time for you to make a decision on how you want your future to be, stay busy, because the idle mind is the devil's handiwork. If you, on positive things, don't run in the streets, sports, education. I don't care if you're not the best at it. Continue to try and get through that. Put your time in the sports, because that's what saved me. Because at the end of the day, I was growing and I was learning and I was focused, and I was too busy between school, sports, and work to end up out in the gangs and to end it, because that's exactly in the drugs, because that was my future. When I look behind me, my past, my present like it was drugs, it was addiction, it was depression. That was all that I knew. I didn't know what other life was out there, but I knew if I stayed busy and focused on sports and just one day, like you said, at a time, even as a young child, that I would eventually learn a different path and take it. So that would be my oh God, I'm so tired. That would be what I would tell them. You know what I'm saying? When it's time to make that decision, what would you tell them in that moment before they make gangs, drugs, sports? Like when it comes time to make that decision, what would you tell them, babies out there that are going through what we've been through?
Yeah, I mean, for today, what comes to mind is I got asked this question yesterday, and it's a completely different answer today. And since we're talking about, one day at a time and that concept, that it's such a simple concept, but I didn't get it until I finally got it. And I would tell people, there's a quote I like, and I believe it's Gandhi, but he says, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." And when I was a kid, I thought you had to do the whole 360, whether if you were a musician, you had to produce the record, do the album cover art, do the photography, write the lyrics, play the drum. Like, I didn't know that you broke that up into smaller parts and then the team did it. And I like the fact that even if you're by yourself, I mean, one step at a time is how you get it done. And you don't have to walk the full journey overnight. And so I was always trying to figure things out. And like you said, that, my mind was always doing me in because I couldn't see a way out. So I chose the easier, softer way, which is the fast lane, which is I don't know how to make money by working hard and showing up. And those are the things that, good people do. And they work, I wanted the fast money, the quick stuff. And so I took the shortcuts. So don't take the shortcuts because you'll end up, again, it's guaranteed that you'll end up in that. And you were talking about your father. I just want to qualify this, not to, my father also, he was murdered when I was 17. So that's where that life gets you. You know what I mean? That street stuff and the drinking and the alcoholism, eventually it's guaranteed, jails, institutions, and death is what's promised to the alcoholic. Unfortunately, if you're an alcoholic, if you're young and that's not even on your thing, again, find the discipline to stay the course, and it's one step at a time. I admire you for the sports thing because I grew up loving sports. I just didn't have the support to do that. And as I look back, I see how impactful sports are because you learn so many life lessons in sports, man. How to take a loss. That's the biggest one.
Yeah,
I don't like to accept that.
It's family. Your daddy's locked up, mine's high, but at least I knew going to school and going in that team where we're hurting, we're tired, but we're still going to push through. That made me feel like, screw it. I may not have the love and what I need, but guess what? You went to your gang, I went to my sports, but at the end of the day, we're freaking sober. We are happy. We are healthy. And more than anything is we're selfless enough to give back. And like you said, that's what makes you feel alive. And we just need to continue to do that because there are babies out there that need to hear our story. There are grown men with no teeth. And I'm not trying to be funny about this because it is happening. We see it all around America. And you are one. You got your new teeth. You're not scared to freaking say it. And people need to hear that because they can feel it. They've been there.
Yeah, no, listen. I had to lose it all to get it all back. And when I say get it back, it starts with me with gratitude. I mean, I wake up, I do my prayer, I quiet my mind and do a 5-minute meditation, sometimes 2 minutes if I'm being honest. And I do a gratitude list and I share that. And I know, again, if you're a kid, you're like, this is not probably something you want to hear. But as a 52-year-old man who still, I run around pretty you're like, you're 52. I'm like, I don't act like it, do I? So
yeah.
The tell is in the mindset, but it's life-changing for me because I don't look at things. I don't take anything that I used to take for granted now. I had a hot shower. I woke up in a safe environment. There's not a warrant for my arrest. I had coffee. I woke up with 2 beautiful dogs, my girl. If that's all I ever get, I'm overpaid. And I look at that in every area I go. I try to, if I can't find the light, I try to be the light. And so if you're young and you ain't finding a good vibe, be the good vibe then. A lot of times it starts with you. You got to be, because I get to spots that the vibe sucks. So you know what? I could leave or I could just be the good vibe and start the vibe.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I hate to do this, but I have to jump in for a minute because we do have something else to talk about, and we are on a time frame. The engineer's giving me dirty look. So first, I want to say both of you have been the best guests we've had in a while, and I'm going to tell you each a funny story before I get to the next thing. Just so the first time I met Danny has to do with sports. So I was, of course, just like Danny, and I was a young Irish drinking bar brawler. And he came out to Boston, and we took him to the Yankees-Red Sox home game series for 3 days. Now, Danny, who you don't know, is gigantic in person. He's about 6'6". He's a very large man. And he showed up to the first day, and I'm a former Red Sox security. George, who's talking about slaying, we're the biggest Sox guys, whatever. And Danny shows up head to toe in Yankees outfit. I'm talking the pinstripe shirt, all the whole nine,
Full regalia,
the
brother.
hat, the whole thing. I thought we were going to get killed until I told everyone that, just Danny from House of Pain. But anyway, something I have to bring up that one of the reasons why we had you both, it's Lacey's Corner about why we had you on, Danny, is on February 27th, we are having a fantastic fundraiser, much thanks to Lacey, called the Step Up Confidence Course. We're having it in Beaufort, South Carolina. Again, it's February 27th. And basically what it's all about is going to be about basically entertaining the kids, teaching them a little bit about American history, teaching them about the importance of, working out, having fun. There's going to be some obstacle courses. And I just wanted to make sure I brought that up. You can check out our website for registration. It is www.stepupamericaprogram.org. And by the way, those of you who don't know about Danny's Outsider House, the best way to find out about that is www.theoutsiderhouse.com. They're, of course, on Instagram, Facebook, all those social media things. But on the 27th, we are going to be having an incredible day. And Danny, hopefully at some point we'll maybe get out to Tulsa, and we'll have one out in Tulsa with maybe the Outsiders House there.
I would
We
love
all
that.
get
That'd be
together.
awesome.
And one other thing, Danny, I want to bring up is, and I know Lacey would probably love this, is if we could ever get S.E. Hinton to come on Lacey's Corner so Lacey could meet her favorite author, S.E., that would be the stuff. I know she's mad busy.
I'll see what I can do, but I can definitely, Lacey, if Mark has my email, let me send you a package. I got S.E. Hinton Rules t-shirt for you. I'll send you some swag from the museum. We have a lot of cool little stuff. I'll send you a care package out.
Yeah, thank you. I got to get your Instagram, all that. I'd love for you to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Lacey has her own podcast, Danny. She's actually just such a good person.
Yeah, no, for sure. Listen, it's always a pleasure for me to tell my story. And again, even for me, I was hopeless for a long time, and hope got me through. And really, it's doing the legwork is why I'm still here. So it feels good to be on this side of the dirt, and anything I can do to be of service and spread the message of of recovery and the Outsiders Museum. It's my pleasure.
If you ever need Ben Franklin to read the Outsiders Museum to some kids or something, you let me know. You haven't seen Ben yet. I got to zoom in with you and Ben. I'll get together with you on
reading
that.
with Ben Franklin. I like the ring too.
Ben Franklin Reads the Outsiders House by S.E. Hinton at the Danny Boy O'Connor Museum would be a good fun time. You got to see Ben, Danny.
I don't
You'll
know
love
if you
it.
ever come through, but that's how I met Chris. They wrestled at the BOK Center here in Tulsa. I live at the museum. I live at the hotel across the street at the Mayo Hotel. So if you ever find yourself in Tulsa, look me up, and I will definitely give you guys the VIP tour of the house and anything that is in Tulsa. I live here full time now. I left Beverly Hills for beautiful downtown Tulsa, and it's the best move I ever made. So
Awesome, will do.
Lacey, Danny Boy, thank you guys so much. But one of the things Mark left out about this event on February 27th is it is taking donations from individuals like us sitting in this room. I mean, I've donated to
Everyday
families.
people.
And here's our goal, this really cool event that these kids get to go sit and hang out with
Bouncy house.
Lacey Evans.
Obstacle courses.
Have a ton of fun. Be part of a group, which, Danny Boy, you alluded to that. Lacey, you alluded to that. It's all about being part of a team, right? And being part of something bigger than yourself. And we know there are a lot of families out there struggling right now. And we're asking for donations for families. We are asking for donations so every child that literally wants to come to this event can participate, period. And that is very easy to do. You just go to our website page. We'll put it on this on the link under Facebook. But Lacey, do you want to expand upon that? Because you're being a gracious hostess in a couple weeks here, so.
Yeah, so we decided that Step Up America and the Franklin Project would kind of come together with some physical motivation and health for our youth because, it's important. They are the future of America, and America needs teamwork, not only just in careers, but just overall to make this world a better place. So we decided that we would do a confidence course to show them that what they're capable of, and also mix in a little bit of the Franklin Project knowledge to see how America is based on. So with that being said, February 27th, we are going to come together with music, dollar hot dogs, and it's only $20 for the entire family to come out. It's outdoors, lots of space for social distancing. There will be music. It'll be a good time for families to come together and for children to push themselves, not only physically, but mentally, and work as a team to get something done, to complete a task. So it'll be exciting. We're going to have a lot of different obstacles, some challenges for all of the babies out there, and there's no age. Literally, if you have a 2-year-old, we're going to have a course for them. The parents can go through with them. And if you're 15, 16, 17, if you are 30 years old and want to get your butt out there to push yourself and learn about the founding fathers, about our country, and about how our youth is going to be the future and the difference they can make, go ahead and go on the link, get with Step Up America. And if you can't come, but you want to sponsor a family who can't afford to be there, we are going to have a lot of families that show up that may not be able to afford it, and that we are already getting messages from them of how that they could still make it. And we're going to, no kid is going to be left behind. All the babies are going to be welcome, and all the families are going to be welcome, and we're going to take care of everybody. This is one of many events that Step Up America and the March Forward Foundation with me, Lacey Evans, is going to have going forward to provide this with these to families that need it out there. I think we need now more than ever health, fitness, motivation, love, kindness, teamwork. That's what America is about, and that's what we need, and that's what we're working together to provide for our youth and for our families of America. February 27th, in Nasties, come out.
All right.
Love that.
So we're running out of time, and before Mark closes this out for us, tongue twister there. I just want to thank Danny Boy. Thank you again for your amazing story. We're going to have you back on again because, no words. It's just incredible how you've come full circle and are continuing to thrive and give back. It's incredible. And Miss Lacey, thank you for always giving back to the community and kicking butt and being a part of our show. So from the bottom of my heart and the Step Up America Foundation, we can't thank you two enough for being part of this show. Mark, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in this afternoon. Our guests were, of course, Danny Boy O'Connor, the executive director of the Outsiders House Museum. He is also the founder of the Delta Bravo team. They drive around and they fly around the whole country taking awesome photos of old movie sites, true crime, etc. Check them all out online. And, of course, it was the one and only Lacey Evans joining us today for Lacey's Corner. Do not forget, on February 27th, we are having an incredible fundraiser in Beaufort, South Carolina. To find out more, go to www.stepupamericaprogram.org. This week, we're going to do a special ending because we have Danny and Lacey. We're going to say, listen to Lacey and stay gold, you nasties. And be like Ben and be kind to others, and you're being best to yourself. Danny Boy, Lacey, thank you so much, everybody. God bless America.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Take care,
Thanks,
y'all.
guys.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks, Danny. I'll be in touch.
You got it, brother.
So long.